Why do I do this to myself? Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? It's been about a year. Welcome back to what's this show called again? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What's Up With That, the show where we Oh, okay, I think I'm fine. I think I'm fine. Welcome back to What's Up With That, the show where Oh, sorry about that. I'm allergic to cringe. Welcome back to What's Up With That. I'm your host, Karaoke, and these are our top stories. So, you guys like sports?
Huh?
Cool, I don't care. Let's talk about the greatest sport of all time, wrestling. And last week was the greatest weekend of all. If you haven't heard about it, it's something called WrestleMania. Nope, never mind. I changed my mind. I haven't watched it. Forget. Are you kidding? I'm wearing an Uso hat. Of course I freaking watched WrestleMania. You guys are too serious. Like, calm down. Let me tell you about WrestleMania. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not talking about AJ Styles. Nah, I have something sad to say about him. He lost. I was a fan of him, but now he disappointed me. He lost to that no good, spoiled, rotten, so-called megastar, Logan Paul. What a joke. How did this even happen? Why? Why is he ruining wrestling? Like, I mean, he's good and all, but like, if it was up to me, if I was in the ring right now, I'd grab his brass knuckles and shove it up his. My lawyers have advised me to stop talking about him. Okay, AJ Styles lost. Who cares? Who cares? Okay, it was a good night. The man has finally come around out of retirement, and she showed up at Las Vegas. Like, whoa, Becky Lynch is back. We saw Becky Lynch team up with Lyra Valkyria and win the tag team titles. It's a shame though. They seemed like a good team. However, Lyra had to screw things up and get pinned by Liv Morgan. Get your ass whooped. So what else is there? We had AJ, we had Randy, we got a whole bunch of Brandos. But if you want me to talk about it, don't. Just go watch it for yourself, okay? I'm just a guy, okay? My opinion does not matter. Wait, does that make me a woman? In other news, John Cena, the best of the best, the you can't see me guy. He came back and it was it was the worst possible match in history. The worst main event. Because, well, I mean, John Cena was there, so, it was kind of good. It was kind of good, but bro literally showed up with a black screen, white text, no soul, and they just gave him the belt. Like, I should join WWE. They're giving away free championships. Let me tell you something about Cody Rhodes, right? Good guy. Main eventer. He beat Roman Reigns. He beat Brock Lesnar. But he couldn't beat an old John Cena. I'm just saying. Okay, let's see what's next on the old top. No. Are you serious? I can't do that. I can't talk about it. This is too much.
Bro, I don't give a shit. Just read the damn prompt and do your job.
I don't get paid enough for this. All right. So recently, Warner Brothers came out with the greatest masterpiece of all time. So we have all these iconic actors, right? Jason Momoa, Emma Myers, Danielle Brooks, and Jablinski Games himself, the legendary, the man, the myth, the legend, Jack Black. Right. That's what I'm saying. But that's not even the problem. It's not the problem. The movie, it's not it's not a good topic. Okay? It's the Minecraft. A Minecraft movie. A movie about placing blocks and stuff. I am placing blocks and stuff. I'm Minecraft. Okay. We have all these actors, right? They're wild. They're amazing. And they just having the time of their lives, right? Wrong-o. Our brain-rotted society thinks it's okay to grab popcorn, grab their candy, and wait for this one moment in this film. That's just a funny word. It's a funny little thing, a chicken and a zombie, right? And if you know what it means,
chicken jockey.
then yeah, okay, we get it. We get it. It's funny, okay? But you don't have to ruin a perfectly good movie theater just for that. Okay? Like, people work their asses off. You gotta be nice. Nice to the theaters. It's called respect, okay? RSP, fuck, I don't know how to spell. RESPECT. Find out what it means to me, I think. Right? I don't fucking know. It's just be nice, okay? And get this. This is not even the worst bit. This is the worst bit. This just blows my mind, okay? So Jack Black apparently made a song that's 30 seconds long, right? Right? Apparently, the song is so good that it made it to the top 40s in the UK. What number exactly? Let me look at this shit. 20? 21? What? No. You gotta be kidding me. It's a 30-second song about chicken. Maybe I should make a song. Maybe then I could afford a better studio. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's the top stories we got today. I got a treat for you guys. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to What's Up With That, the show where we ask the question, why am I still here? Why do I do this? Just kidding, I know why I do this. It's to pay for my house arrest. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a treat for you. This is gonna be wild, okay? This is big for me. Like, I'm impressed that I even got this. Ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, we're getting epic on this. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a guest. That is freaking phenomenal. And it ain't AJ Styles, okay? But he is amazing. I have been a fan of his since I first started watching wrestling at the Bulldog Saloon, all right? All right, yeah, see, we're getting hyped. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Mr. Beefy Goodness. Can you hear me good?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Perfect. How you doing today?
Amazing.
Yeah. I like your outfit.
Thanks, man.
Very professional. Well, shall we get right into the questions?
Absolutely.
So tell me, how did you become a wrestler?
It was a series of fortunate flukes. I was always a fan when I was a kid. And when I was about 15 years old, there was an independent wrestling show that came to my high school. And so, of course, being a big fan, I was waiting around for the ring to show up. And it was kind of, exciting for me to be able to help the guys haul the ring into the building and help set the ring up. And after it was set up, the promoter said, "Hey, we're going to go get a bite to eat. Would you mind watching the ring for us?" And I thought I died and gone to heaven, right? A 15-year-old kid with access to a wrestling ring and no supervision.
No way, that's awesome.
And so my buddy and I jumped in there and started wrestling around. And I guess maybe the promoter forgot his wallet. And he came back to get his jacket with his wallet in it and saw us in the ring. And we jumped out right away. We thought, man, we're going to catch hell. And he was very calm, and he just came into the middle of the gymnasium, climbed into the ring, and said, "So you think you can wrestle?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. 15 years old, you think you know everything about everything." And so he called me into the ring, and he said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And about 3 seconds flat, he had me like tied up in a pretzel. And I said, "You still want to wrestle?" I said, "Not right now." Yeah, but
Get me out of this pretzel.
yeah, about 2 years later, he connected me. I called him up, and he connected me with a trainer, and that got me started down the road to pro wrestling.
Oh wow, that is awesome. You started out as a ring boy.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah. Who was the guy that you were, the wrestler, I should say?
Sure, yeah. He's not a name that people would recognize. His name was Mark Charles.
Mark
And he
Charles.
was a local guy who had wrestled for a couple of years in Manitoba, and then got out of the industry and got into telecommunications, but played a very important role in opening the first door for me.
Oh wow, that is amazing. And yeah, I never knew. Like, you started out 15, and you were like in the ring.
Yeah, it was a first introduction. Later on when I was 17 years old, he introduced me to a trainer whose name was Ernest Rowe. And Ernest, at the time when he trained me, was 63 years old. And he was like this tough old French pipeline worker with he would throw a chop that would make your eyes water. But Ernest was very well respected and loved in the Winnipeg wrestling community, and so after training with Ernest, he put in a word to get me my first match. So I debuted May 13th, 1993.
No way, that's amazing. What was your first show?
It was for River City Wrestling in Winnipeg at the Chalmers Community Club, and I've got a camcorder footage of the match, and I look at it as probably the worst 12 minutes of professional wrestling of all time.
Well, it's your first show, so
Yeah,
not
but fortunately, River City Wrestling was just getting started at that time. I think it was their second show ever, but their first show at the Chalmers Community Club. So me starting out at that time allowed me to become one of the mainstay baby faces on their roster. So I kind of grew up in the business as the company grew over the next 2 or 3 years. So it was a really interesting time. At that time, there was maybe 20 veterans for every rookie. So it didn't matter who you got in the ring with, you were learning from somebody. And there was guys at that time who were had wrestled in the territory days in Canada. So there was guys like Doug McCall, uh, Sergeant Tom Steele, who had wrestled in Vancouver as J.R. Bundy, Mike Stone, who had wrestled in Vancouver, but also in Kansas City and Mexico. Then you'd have guys like Rick Patterson, who was Leatherface in Japan for IWA Japan, Eddie Watts, who was a junior heavyweight champion and later tag team champion for Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico. So all of these guys, all of these veteran influences around, and then a couple of young, hungry guys. There was myself, getting started, Robbie Royce, who was a couple years ahead of me, Steve Stryker, Stan Saxon, guys that were young and still wanted to go out and make a career of wrestling. So it was just a really, encouraging time to get into the sport.
That's amazing. Was Andy Anderson part of that little group?
Andy came in a couple years later. So I first met Andy in 1996.
Oh, wow.
He had called me up. He had actually reached out. He was looking to get into wrestling at the time. He was going to university in Edmonton. And I mean, this is the early 90s. This is, before really, had access to social media and everybody's email address was published. But somehow he got connected with Mark Miro at that time. And Mark Miro told him, if you're gonna get serious about wrestling, you need to find a trainer, you need to find a school. And then through a mutual connection, somehow Andy found me.
Wow.
So I gave him the info, as we did with so many guys that said they wanted to get into wrestling at that time, thinking I may never hear from him again. And 3 weeks later, he showed up on my doorstep and said, "I'm here. I'm ready to train." And
Now to this day, you guys are best buds.
yeah, 29 years later, we're one of the longest running tag teams in Canadian wrestling history.
It should have went longer. Those damn handsome devils, I tell you. You guys should have won.
Well, I don't think that the handsome devils have seen the last of us yet. So I would say it's not over yet.
Damn right. Gonna kick some ass. That is awesome. So do you see yourself, Beefy, as a future, like, going big in like WWE or like TNA or AEW kind of deal? Or
No,
will
I
you just
think
stay in the locals?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think I've kind of aged out of those bigger opportunities. I've been wrestling for 32 years. And over that time, accumulated a lot of injuries. So I've had my lower back fused, my L4, L5 vertebrae are fused together. I've completely ripped my ACL in my left knee. And I've been wrestling without that for 2 years. So I think that sort of the combination of age and cumulative injuries, and my neck is really bad, have sort of closed the door on the potential for that. I did have an opportunity to do extra work for the WWE in 2004 when they came to Portland, Oregon and Tacoma, Washington. Yeah, you know what? It's been really exciting for me because, when you think that when you get into wrestling, you say, I want to go to the WWE. I like to wrestle at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. And then you don't realize until you get in and maybe different opportunities happen, different doors open, different doors close, that, the opportunities that I've had to travel coast to coast in Canada, and also, a little bit into the United States, not very much, but, training guys, mentoring talent, the opportunity to produce wrestling shows, where you get to look at all the talent that you have available and bring the best out of them. And then also, the work that I've done as a historian. So I've now written, 3 books on professional wrestling in Canada.
Really?
And those types of opportunities, may not have come up had I had the fortune to sign a contract, at some point in my career. So, I think that there's everything happens for a reason. And, I've been really, really happy with being able to educate generations of people about professional wrestling and even lifelong wrestlers who didn't know about the history of our own sport.
That's amazing and such an accomplishment. Like,
Yeah.
read books, you said?
Yeah, I started, my interest in the history kind of happened by fluke. So when I began, we were wrestling for River City Wrestling. We had television on Shaw TV, basically cable access TV in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So our TV show was going to about 100,000 homes, but I didn't live in the city, so I never got to see the show. I lived like 2 hours out of town. And so the first time that I got to watch like one of my own matches on television, I was listening to the commentators and they were talking about my trainer, Ernest Rowe. And they said, Ernest Rowe, he's a legend in wrestling and he accomplished these things in the 1950s and he was a tag team partner with this guy and this league. And he had never told me anything about that. And so I got curious and I thought, as a thank you to my trainer, I'm going to go down to the archives in Winnipeg. I'm going to go through the old microfilm. I'm going to find an article or a picture from a newspaper that he was in, and give it to him because obviously he had never kept it. And so I started, going through, and I don't know if you've ever had to deal with microfilms in your life. Now, most of the newspapers that are online, like through newspapers.com or Newspapers Archive, it's all digital.
Right.
But at that time, you had to go and like load a spool and like scroll through page by page of the newspapers. There was no keyword search or anything like that we have access to now.
Yeah, you have to find it and stuff.
Yeah, so it was like those old detective movies when they go into the archives and looking through old newspapers. Right. So, I spent a whole summer going through and I never found anything out about Ernest Rowe. And it turned out that story that they told on TV was a lie. But what I did discover was, how busy the Winnipeg wrestling scene was in the 1950s and 60s. Even before the big leagues came in from the United States, there was an active local club that produced so many talent that went on international, like Bulldog Bob Brown, Moose Morawski, Gil Hayes, the Von Steiger brothers, Roy McClarty, Gordon Nelson, George Gordienko. So many guys that came out of Winnipeg, and it was fascinating to me. And I just kept going. And so I started by collecting results of shows. And then, we reached a point where I'm like, I need to do something with this information because nobody wants to buy a book of results. There's just so few results nerds out there. So we took it, and when I was 23 years old, wrote the first book, and it was about the history of wrestling in Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought, I think I can go bigger than that. And so in 2009, I did a book completely on the Western four provinces, in the history of pro wrestling in the Canadian West. And then over the pandemic, of course, the world shut down. There was no wrestling shows. There was no place to go, no place to be, for a year. And so initially I thought, well, I've written on wrestling in the Canadian West. I should write on wrestling in the Canadian East. And so I started to write that book as basically the Eastern complement to the one I'd done in the West. And then I realized it's been, over a decade since I did the one in the West. It's time to update all that stuff too. So the latest book was released in 2023 is called Uncontrolled Chaos, Canada's Remarkable Professional Wrestling Legacy. And it's an encyclopedia of pro wrestling history from the 1930s to now, territory by territory, company by company. And it includes a title histories listing of more than 700 championships that have been recognized in Canada over that time.
That's amazing. Is this book like in stores?
It has been available on Amazon, and it's been published through Friesen Press. So it's also available on their website, friesenpress.com. And then I always am out across the country, doing book signings and have the books with me when I'm making wrestling appearances. So in addition to the appearances that I'm making now, and we're doing dates, across primarily in the West from Alberta and BC, but also Saskatchewan, Manitoba. But I will be in Gatineau, Quebec on Saturday, June 14th as part of the 80s Wrestling Con. And I'm really excited to be there as well.
Right on. You think you'll ever come back to Olds?
To Olds, Alberta?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that there'll be a date in Olds on the calendar. I'm sure we're back there in May, I think.
Oh yeah, for the old I forget what it was. But like Levi Knight will be there and there's another thing going on, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm blanking on who I might be wrestling in Olds, but yeah, it's been a busy schedule, probably busier than I had anticipated. And just when I think I might have a weekend off, we're going to call into action somewhere. In
That's the
the
life
month
on the
of
road, I guess, yeah.
yeah, you know what? While there's still demand, we'll keep going.
Exactly. And you're doing a damn good job.
Awesome, thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. You probably recognize me from the front row.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And my family, we always come and watch wrestling.
Sure. Are you a big fan?
I'd say.
Okay, who would you say is your favorite wrestler?
Ooh, like in general or at the bar?
Either.
So for the bar, I think I really have a thing for Bobby Sharp.
Okay.
Like, he's intrigued me, and he's reminded me of like AJ Styles kind of deal.
Sure.
Like just the style.
I've known Bobby Sharp since his very first match.
Uh,
He started training when he was 13 years old.
wow.
He was training in the under 18 division for Monster Pro Wrestling in Edmonton. And his very first match was in February 2003. And it was a three-way match with Brady Malibu and a guy named Tom McDonald.
Oh, wow.
Tom, you might recognize, he's now left professional wrestling. He's now a big-time rapper in the United States. Pretty notorious for like his political raps.
Really?
Yeah, he's even done music videos with Roseanne from like the Roseanne Show and things like that. But if you Google Tom McDonald music, he actually started as a professional wrestler when he was 14 years old.
Oh, I'm curious now. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is crazy. Oh, wow. Yeah, I recognize this guy. And he started wrestling?
Yeah, he was wrestling as a teenager. He was in the same class with Bobby Sharp, and then went on to do music and has had a very successful career internationally.
It's freaking cool. That's crazy what people can do.
Yeah.
Wow. So what do you do for work here, Beefy?
You know what? It's been a very busy year with wrestling, and now as I'm getting near the end of my career, I've been working with a lot of companies on the administrative end, on the promotion and marketing, and also producing. So being able to identify talent and where their strengths lie, and then get the best out of that talent and help them to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. So if their goal is to just be the best locally in Alberta, then we'll help them to do that. If their goal is to go higher in the industry, then give them the best advice in terms of these are the places you want to be, these are the opportunities you want to take, these are the people that need to know who you are. And so that's been really rewarding for me. In addition to doing my book, also working on a couple of other book projects in the near future. So one of them, we've done the first draft and sent it to the family. There was a very longtime photographer named Bob Leonard, who was the photographer for Stampede Wrestling for many, many years. So he got, some really fantastic action shots of some of the guest stars that would come into Stampede Wrestling, but also, has some of the first and rarest rookie shots of guys like Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit, and Bret Hart. So Bob passed away a few years ago, but I've been working with his family to publish a book, which is the 100 best photos of Bob Leonard. That goes from the it goes from the 1960s to the 1990s. So the family is currently reviewing a draft of that book, working on that. We're also working on an updated version of the record book portion of Uncontrolled Chaos, updating the title histories and the statistics, because it's very hard to find a wrestling book where there's actual stats like any other sports almanac. You know, where you go buy a hockey record book and you can find out who scored the most goals and who had the most assists and who played the most games ever, and people really latch onto those stats. But we've never had it for professional wrestling,
Right.
because it's hard. It's hard because you know, in hockey, you don't have to say, oh, well, Wayne Gretzky played, I don't know the number, let's say 500 professional games of hockey. Like, oh, wait, we forgot about that year that he was, playing as the masked wingman. With wrestlers, sometimes your name changes with every territory that you go to. And then even then, sometimes the records that were kept by the promoters were not complete. So now that, you know, I have that database of results to work from that I've built since 1994, we now have access to more than 60,000 results, 60,000 wrestling shows from 1867 to now. So we're able to track all of that, you know, most title reigns, longest title reign, for men, women, and tag teams. Statistically, who are the top 100 men, women tag teams of all time? And now we're working on a list of the exports, so the international records of Canadian wrestlers. You know, who were the most successful exports, men, women, and tag teams of all time?
Hard to keep track.
Yeah, so it's a big project. It's taken a long time to complete, but I think when it gets done, it's going to be the most thorough reference for Canadian wrestling ever.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Like, wrestling needs more acknowledgement, because it still kind of pisses me off that some people think, like, oh, all this stuff is, like, fake and stuff. It's predetermined, blah, blah, blah. But there's, like, an art to that. And it needs to be acknowledged more.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I can tell you, you know, I've definitely heard that over the years, you know, that this is, a fake sport. And what I can tell you is you can't fake gravity.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when you get slammed down to the mat, there's going to be an impact for that. And that's when things go right. And I think, world champion Nick Bockwinkel said it best when he says, when you fall right, it hurts. When you fall wrong, you're retired.
Exactly.
I found that to be very accurate. Over the years, many guys that I've had the chance to travel and wrestle with, are long retired and not active anymore in the ring, and sadly, even a few guys have passed away.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
May their souls rest in peace.
It's the nature of wrestling.
Yeah, but it sure does make an impact.
It sure does, right? And brings smiles to a lot of people's faces. We had a big show here last weekend in Wetaskiwin.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. How did that go?
It drew probably one of the biggest crowds in Can-Am wrestling history. It was a pretty solid turnout, considering that Wetaskiwin isn't a regular stop on the circuit. A lot of people were experiencing professional wrestling for the first time. Didn't know what to expect.
And it must have been good.
Yeah, so I think that they were pretty stoked, and we know that we're going to come back to Wetaskiwin, but not as regularly as we are to other towns. We'll probably be back next April.
Right on. So about this persona you have, Mr. Beefy Goodness, where did that come from?
You know what? It was probably another fortunate fluke, as I would like to say in my career. The first 8 years that I wrestled, we were trying to come up with a name. You wanted to have something that was immediately identifiable. Like if you say Macho Man, you know who you're talking about.
Randy Savage.
If you say The Body, right, you know who that is, right? So trying to find a hook like that and see like what is the thing, and we would throw all kinds of ideas at the wall and tried lots of different things over the first 8 years, and none of it really stuck. And then what happened one night, I was wrestling in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and the promoter said, "Hey, you like to go out there and get on the microphone before you start your match and get people stirred up?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, one of our wrestlers, his sister's here, and she's never been to live wrestling before. Can you give her a hard time?" I said, "Yeah, point her out. I'll give her a hard time, no problem." And so I got in the ring, and I got this girl so flustered and embarrassed that the next time that we came back to Prince Albert, as soon as my music hit, she went and hid as far away from the front row as possible. And so I went in the ring and got on the microphone and was saying my things. And as I was about to hand the microphone back, my arm was fully extended to the ring announcer to hand the microphone back. She thought she was safe, and she popped up behind the back row of chairs. And I was like, wait, everybody, look at that woman right there. Of course, now all eyes in the whole building are on her. And she's sneaking around behind those chairs. She's going to try to come through these chairs, jump over the guardrail, climb in the ring, and grab 2 handfuls of my beefy goodness. And to this day, I have no idea, where that combination of words, came into my mind. But I turned around to start the match, and my opponent was laughing so hard that we couldn't start the match. He needed to regain his composure. And he was a long-haired guy, so he had thrown his hair over his face, but you could just see his shoulders, just
chuckling
big
away.
chuckle. So when I got to the back, the other wrestlers were like, "Haha, beefy goodness, that's funny." And the next night, we were on a tour. The promoter said, "Do that beefy goodness thing again." And so we did it every night. And then I left right from there, actually, to go on a tour with Can-Am. And Can-Am was doing a tour of the Northwest Territories. And I said to them when I arrived, "Hey, I've just started doing this thing. Do you mind if I try it out?" And they said, "No, by all means, do it." And by the end of that week with Can-Am, it had stuck. I was Mr. Beefy Goodness. And then over the next few years is just figuring out, okay, well, if I'm Mr. Beefy Goodness, what does that look like? What does it sound like? And so the thing with the tearaways, came into place, and bright colored trunks, and then it was underwear style trunks and whatever, right? Anything that we can do to make people respond as strongly as possible. And more than 20 years later, people are still responding to it. New fans are just latching onto it and are curious about it. And so we just are going to keep going.
Yeah, my sister is definitely a fan of you.
There you have it.
Yeah, she would always call you guys. She would call you Caillou, and then call Andy like Santa Claus or something.
Right.
If you remember that from the front row.
Yeah, you know what? It's been really exciting to see that the fans are still engaged. The roster right now with Can-Am is fantastic. We've got some phenomenal
And it keeps
talent.
growing too.
From top to bottom. You got guys like Scorpius, who we trained last year at the Nightmare Factory, Cody Rhodes' school in Atlanta, and did matches on television for AEW. Then you have Mentalo, who is just here, who's been all over the world, Mexico and Japan. Andy Anderson has wrestled in Mexico, Japan, Puerto Rico, England, Ring of Honor, WCW, WWE. So you've got all of these guys, tremendous talents, and a very competitive roster. So to be still voted by fans' choice as Tag Team of the Year or Most Hated Wrestler of the Year, it's pretty phenomenal, actually, when you think about the competition that exists even just within that locker room.
Yeah, and I'm glad that everybody keeps doing it. The whole Wrestling of the Year thing.
Yeah, and it's really, I think, Can-Am, particularly in some of those key towns, Innisfail, Olds, Okotoks, we have some, very loyal fans. They know the product, they know the talent, they know the backstories of everybody. And, as a result, as soon as they hear the music, they already know how they want to react. Right?
I'm starting to get that way.
Yeah.
I'm slowly getting to know everybody.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, there's you and Andy. I recognize your themes, so I know how to react.
Sure.
And Aaron 6, and of course Bobby
sure.
Sharp.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but there's a couple of newbies like Jesse Youngblood. I saw him recently, and I'm like, damn, he's pretty good.
He is, you know, for a gentleman his size, you wouldn't expect him to be able to move the way that he does, but he's agile like a cat.
Exactly. I don't know why the thing is giving me 9 minutes for freaking Zoom time. It's saying like upgrade to Pro.
Mm,
Oh, that's fine. I'm getting to the end anyways. I have one final question.
sure.
What made you want to become a heel instead of like a babyface?
It wasn't a conscious decision. You know, when I started my career, I was a babyface, and at about 2 years into the sport, I'd been part of a tag team with Robbie Royce. We were called the Wild Ones, and a new booker came into the company, and he had a new vision for the direction it was going to go. And he said, "Hey, you guys have been a great tag team, but we really want to light fire under our junior heavyweight division." And we were both, you know, in that 160 to 180 pound range. So he said, "We need to break you guys up because you guys are two of the best young guys that we've got, and we want to have you guys be the stars of our junior heavyweight division." And so he made the decision to turn me heel. And at first, I was devastated. You know, I just thought, why do you want to do that? You know, I'm very, you know, getting strong reactions from the people. And, you know, his answer to me was, that's exactly why. It's going to be more devastating to the people if you're the guy that goes heel instead of your partner. But it's turned out to be the biggest benefit to my whole career because, you know, what I've discovered is as a traveling heel, there's always work for you. Everywhere, right? Any company is built up their own hero. You know, they're Hulk Hogan. You know, but they always need that guy to come in to make Hulk Hogan look like $1,000,000. And so as a result, you know, I've had the fortune to be flown in, you know, from all across the country, you know, to work with those top baby faces everywhere. And as you know, if I was the baby face, I don't know that I would have had the same opportunities. And so promoters will call me up and say, "Hey, you know," and a good example would be last year. I had you know, canceled a lot of bookings in the meantime because I was doing a lot of international travel for business, and I was in China. And so I got back from China, and I'd been home for a day. And I'd been on the road for 25 days. I was home for one day. I got a call from a promoter, and he said, "Listen, I know you just got back from China, and you're probably still jet lagged and tired." He said, "But we've had a situation in our organization, and we need to replace our champion immediately, and we need it to be on a strong heel because of where we need to go over the next 6 months. So are you available to do it?" And so on 2 days' notice, you know, when I hadn't been booked, suddenly now I'm in the top spot as the top heel in a company because promoters have faith in what I'm going to be able to do, the reactions that I'm going to be able to get from the fans, and the business that I'll be able to do in ticket sales when those fans want to see me get my ass kicked. And so being a heel, I think it's a calling, and it's something that you know, not everybody can do. They think they can, you know, they like the trash talking part, but there's a lot of downsides to being a heel as well. So, you know, if I'm doing my job effectively, I'm not going to sell as much merchandise. People aren't going to want to buy my t-shirts. They're not going to want to buy my stickers and magnets and keychains. So in that way, you give up a lot you know, to do so, but it's also how serious I am about the craft to make sure that that I am the best heel possible, and continue to do business for those promoters that still want to take a chance on me.
Yeah, it takes a lot to do all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you so much for coming. This is like a huge deal for me. I have
Awesome.
never been able to interview someone as famous as you would be.
Awesome. It's my pleasure to be here, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, your story is absolutely phenomenal. And before you go, whenever you get the time, do you think you could cut a promo for my sister and I could like send a video it to her?
Yeah, definitely. You send me the information and I'll cut that promo and send it to you.
Yeah, because she would love that.
Awesome.
Right on. Thank you so much, Vance.
Absolutely.
And send it to me on Instagram.
Sounds great.
All right. Have a good day.
Okay.